Imagine being 18 years old, broke, exiled, and hunted by your own brother's royal army. That was Cleopatra, the last ruler of ancient Egypt, fighting for her sheer survival. Most people think she won power with beauty, but her real weapon was her mind. She was a brilliant scholar who studied mathematics, philosophy, astronomy, and international politics in Alexandria. While previous rulers spoke only Greek, she learned the native Egyptian language to inspire her people. She could speak 9 different languages, making her a formidable diplomat in every single negotiation. But her younger brother and his greedy advisors stole her throne and banished her into exile. They sent professional assassins into the desert to hunt her down before she could return. She raised a small rebel army in the sand, but she needed a much bigger miracle. That miracle arrived when the most powerful general on earth marched into the Egyptian capital. Julius Caesar of Rome arrived with his legions, looking for money and political control. Cleopatra knew that whoever spoke to Caesar first would win the war for the throne. But the palace was surrounded by her brother's armed soldiers who had orders to kill her. So she devised one of the most daring and unforgettable schemes in all human history. Under the cover of darkness, she took a small boat and rowed into the royal harbour. She had her most loyal servant wrap her up inside a heavy canvas bedsheet sack. The servant carried the hidden queen through the palace gates, pretending it was a gift. He walked right past the suspicious guards and dropped the heavy bundle on Caesar's floor. Out rolled the young 18-year-old queen, ready to make the gamble of her life. Caesar was mesmerized by her extreme boldness, quick wit, and unmistakable charm right away. Instead of a frightened exile, he found a confident ruler who understood Roman politics perfectly. By sunrise, Caesar had pledged his Roman swords to help her reclaim her rightful crown. When her younger brother discovered what happened, he screamed in rage and declared open war. Egyptian soldiers surrounded the palace, trapping Caesar and Cleopatra inside for 6 bloody months. Roman soldiers fought in the streets, while fires burned through the great docks of Alexandria. Sadly, the flames spread and destroyed thousands of ancient scrolls in the famous Great Library. Despite the hunger and chaos, Cleopatra never lost her cool under the constant military siege. Finally, Roman reinforcements broke through the enemy lines and destroyed the rebel Egyptian army completely. Her brother drowned in the Nile River while trying to escape from the battlefield in armor. At only 21 years old, Cleopatra became the undisputed queen of the Egyptian Empire. To celebrate the victory, she took Caesar on a luxurious cruise up the Nile River. She showed him ancient pyramids, golden temples, and the incredible wealth of her kingdom. Soon after, she gave birth to a healthy baby boy named Caesarion, Caesar's only son. Wanting to secure her son's future, she packed her royal court and moved to Rome. She lived in Caesar's private villa, throwing lavish parties that stunned the Roman elites. Roman senators grew deeply jealous of her immense wealth and her strong influence over Caesar. They feared Caesar would move the capital to Alexandria and make her queen of Rome. That fear triggered one of the most famous political assassinations in the history of the world. On the Ides of March, Caesar was surrounded and stabbed 44 times by senators. Rome descended into total chaos, and Cleopatra knew her life was in grave danger there. She grabbed her young son, loaded her ships, and escaped back home to safety. When she returned to Egypt, she found her kingdom facing famine and a failing harvest. The Nile River had failed to flood, leaving dry fields and millions of hungry citizens. Instead of hoarding gold, Cleopatra opened the royal granaries to feed her starving people immediately. She cut taxes and managed trade routes brilliantly to stabilize the broken Egyptian economy. Her people loved her and worshipped her as the living reincarnation of the goddess Isis. Meanwhile, Rome was torn apart by a brutal civil war over Caesar's shocking murder. When the dust settled, two Roman warlords divided the empire between themselves for control. Octavian ruled the west from Italy, while Mark Antony ruled the wealthy eastern provinces. Antony needed money to fund his armies, so he summoned Cleopatra to a meeting. He expected her to arrive like a submissive servant, begging for Rome's mercy and protection. Instead, she staged the most lavish and theatrical entrance the ancient world had ever seen. She sailed up the river on a massive golden barge, with bright purple silk sails. Silver oars beat the water, to the rhythm of flutes, harps, and sweet music. She lounged under a canopy of gold, dressed as Aphrodite, the goddess of love. Rare perfumes drifted across the riverbanks, enchanting thousands of spectators who gathered to watch her. When Mark Antony stepped aboard her ship, he was completely speechless at the unbelievable display. Cleopatra hosted a feast, where guests ate from golden plates embedded with precious gems. By the end of the night, the tough Roman general was completely under her spell. But this was not just a romance. It was a masterstroke of political survival. Cleopatra secured protection for her crown, and Antony gained access to Egypt's limitless gold treasury. Antony moved to Alexandria, where they lived a life of absolute luxury and excitement. They created a secret society called the Inimitable Livers, dedicated to dining, drinking, and games. They disguised themselves as peasants at night and wandered the streets playing pranks on locals. Their partnership grew stronger when Cleopatra gave birth to twins, a boy and a girl. Together, they expanded Egypt's borders, reclaiming lands that had been lost for over a century. But their growing independence made Octavian furious back in the capital city of Rome. Octavian knew that as long as Cleopatra funded Antony, he could never rule Rome alone. Then, Antony made a massive political mistake that gave Octavian the weapon he needed. In a grand public ceremony, Antony gifted Roman territories to Cleopatra and her royal children. He proclaimed Caesarion as the true and lawful heir of Julius Caesar before the crowds. Octavian used this news to convince Romans that Antony had betrayed his own homeland forever. He launched a vicious smear campaign, painting Cleopatra as an evil sorceress using dark magic. To destroy Antony's reputation completely, Octavian broke into the sacred temple of the Vestal Virgins. He illegally seized Antony's private will and read its shocking secrets to the Roman Senate. The document stated that Antony wanted to be buried in Alexandria alongside Queen Cleopatra. That single sentence outraged Rome, making citizens believe Antony wanted to give Italy to Egypt. But Octavian was cunning. He did not declare war on Antony, but on Cleopatra directly. By framing it as a foreign invasion, he united all of Italy behind his army. The ancient world plunged into its greatest conflict, as two massive superpowers prepared for battle. Cleopatra and Antony assembled a massive fleet of warships along the western coast of Greece. But Octavian's brilliant admiral trapped their ships inside the narrow Gulf of Actium for months. Severe outbreaks of malaria and food shortages weakened their trapped soldiers day after day. In September of 31 BCE, they attempted a desperate naval breakout in open water. Hundreds of wooden warships clashed as flaming arrows and spears rained across the sea. Realizing the battle line was collapsing, Cleopatra spotted a small opening in the enemy blockade. She led 60 Egyptian ships through the gap, retreating toward Alexandria to save her treasury. Seeing her sails depart, Antony made a fateful choice and abandoned his fighting men. He jumped into a swift rescue boat and sped away to follow his beloved queen. Left without their commanders, their massive fleet and land army surrendered to Octavian days later. Back in Alexandria, Cleopatra knew that her kingdom's final days were rapidly running out. She spent her remaining months studying deadly poisons on prisoners to find a painless death. She also built a magnificent two-story mausoleum filled with gold, jewels, and royal treasures. When Octavian's army reached Alexandria, Antony's remaining soldiers threw down their weapons and surrendered immediately. Fearing for her safety, Cleopatra locked herself inside her fortified tomb with 2 loyal handmaidens. A false rumor spread through the city, claiming that the queen had already committed suicide. When Antony heard the tragic news, his world shattered, and he lost his will to live. He stabbed himself with his own sword, wishing to die alongside his beloved Egyptian queen. But he survived the initial wound, and soon discovered that Cleopatra was actually still alive. Bleeding heavily, he was carried to the base of her locked monument by his servants. Act 6, The Immortal Legend. Cleopatra and her maids hoisted the dying general through an upper window, using heavy ropes. Mark Antony took his final breath in her arms, leaving her to face her fate. Soon after, Octavian's soldiers broke into the monument and captured the grieving queen of Egypt. Octavian treated her politely, but Cleopatra saw right through his cold and calculating words. She learned his true plan. She would be paraded through Rome in chains, as a trophy. She refused to let her royal bloodline be mocked by shouting mobs in Roman streets. She asked permission to visit Antony's tomb one last time, to pour ceremonial offerings there. Returning to her chambers, she bathed in scented oils and dressed in her finest robes. She wrote a final letter to Octavian, requesting to be buried beside Mark Antony forever. She handed the letter to a guard and ordered everyone out of her bedchamber immediately. When Octavian read the letter, he instantly realized her plan and sent guards running. They sprinted through the palace corridors and smashed open the locked doors of her room. But they arrived too late. The brilliant 39-year-old queen was already dead. She lay peacefully on a golden couch, wearing her glittering royal crown and gold jewels. One of her loyal handmaidens lay dead on the floor, while another adjusted her crown. When a guard asked if this was fitting, the dying maid answered with utter pride. She whispered that it was truly fitting for the descendant of so many great kings. How Cleopatra died remains one of the most debated mysteries in all of human history. Popular legend says she smuggled a venomous Egyptian cobra inside a basket of sweet figs. Others believe she drank a lethal poison mixture, hidden inside a hollow hairpin she wore. Either way, she denied Octavian his ultimate victory and died on her own royal terms. Her death marked the tragic end of the Ptolemaic dynasty and ancient Egyptian independence forever. Egypt was absorbed into the Roman Empire, becoming a personal province of the new emperor. Yet Octavian could not erase her memory. Her story became an immortal legend across centuries. She was not just a queen, but a genius who defied the greatest empire ever.